Alright, Meat Shields, I hope you're ready for a certified banger, because this time we're taking on Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman all in one night. It's an action-packed monster mash of the most iconic horror creatures of all time, and somehow it's also one of the cringiest and most badass things that you'll ever see. So get ready for some thrills, laughs, and absolutely epic monster battles, because we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat every single nightmare monster in Van Helsing. This doctor's greatest discovery is about to get him killed. Somewhere deep in the mountains of Transylvania, we find the infamous Dr. Frankenstein celebrating the birth of his most evil creation yet, a reanimated monster made from the parts of multiple dead bodies. But that right here was his biggest mistake. Just then, the powerful vampire Count Dracula appears directly behind him, and he's pleased to see that the project is finished. He's been using the doctor here to find a way to create life. And now that he has the monster, its creator has just outlived his usefulness. Realizing that he's in danger, Victor grabs a sword and tries to defend himself, but Dracula just walks right through it before sinking his fangs into the man's neck. On the table, the monster gets so angry that he breaks free and launches a giant piece of machinery across the room, sending the Count flying backwards into the fireplace as he picks up the doctor and rushes out of the lab. He's spotted by an army of torch-wielding peasants who eventually corner him at the top of an ancient windmill, throwing their torches into the building and causing the whole thing to go up in flames. The crowd scatters when they see Dracula and his 3 vampire brides appear in the sky above them, but there's nowhere left for the monster to run, and he shouts in agony as the tower collapses below them. Alright, talk about the worst birthday ever, am I right? Frankenstein here clearly didn't want to smoke, but he ended up getting it anyway. And it took his entire scientific career to figure out how to create life, but it only took one stupid-ass mistake to bring his life to an end. Which is why, Victor, my boy, you f***ed up. For a man as smart as they say you are, I'm a little bit surprised that you didn't see this coming. I mean, sure, you're a man of science, but whether you believe in the supernatural or not, you've gotta be able to recognize the warning signs of a vampire when you see them. Like, let's see. This guy lives in a castle at the top of a mountain, dresses like Willem Dafoe at a fashion show, has untold riches with no clear origin, and keeps teleporting around the room every time that you turn your back. Newsflash, buddy, that's a f***ing vampire, so maybe you'd want to think twice before inviting him into your lab. Instead, you thought it was smart to make a deal with the literal devil, or more accurately, the son of the devil, and never expected anything bad to come of it. All these castles and advanced technology don't come cheap, you know. Sooner or later, you know your new sugar daddy here was eventually gonna come to collect. And if he's the only guy in the entire country who supports your dream of building a 9-foot-tall zombie from the bodies of people's dead relatives, then it's totally fair to question what his true intentions might be. You know you made some pretty big mistakes when the entire village is trying to burn your house down. And it looks like they would have killed you anyway if Dracula hadn't done it first. So I hope it was worth it because, Victor, you kinda sorta f***ed up. 1 year later, monster hunter Gabriel Van Helsing journeys to Paris on the trail of another notorious doctor with a bad case of split personality. Following the sound of screams and evil laughter in the distance, he eventually tracks the monstrous Mr. Hyde to the attic of an ancient chapel. He's been ordered by the Vatican to bring Dr. Jekyll in, dead or alive, but the big fella here isn't going down without a fight. Using 2 spinning saw blades that he pulls from his jacket, he's able to wound the monster and even take off one of his arms, causing the fight to spill out onto the roof of the chapel. That's when Hyde lifts him into the air and throws him off of the building, but at the last second, Van Helsing pulls out a grappling hook, firing it straight through the monster's stomach, and causing him to plummet to his death as the hunter lands safely at the top of the tower. Okay, now that's what you call a dangerous game of hide and seek. We just met our hero Van Helsing on his latest assignment, but after a performance like that, I'm a little surprised that he's even survived this far into his career. When you take a look at Hyde here, he's standing approximately 10 feet tall. and we can estimate that from his build that he probably weighs about 1,000 pounds, making him twice the size of a silverback gorilla. And he's got the incredible strength and primate-like agility to match. Needless to say, you do not want to be going toe-to-toe with this guy in a fair fight. And that's why Van Helsing's choice to confront him in the church's attic was one of the worst decisions that he could have made. In a close quarters battle, he would have stood absolutely no chance against Hyde if it wasn't for the fact that the monster kept making stupid mistakes. I mean, he almost got killed every time that the big guy was within striking distance. So, instead, he should have tried to turn the tables and lure Hyde into a trap. Now, we know that Hyde spends his nights looking for helpless victims, so Van Helsing could have had his friend Friar Carl dress up like one of his usual targets and lure him into an ambush where they could take him down from long range. But that only solves part of the problem, because every time that he kills one of these monsters, they've already reverted back into human form by the time that any other witnesses show up. And it's giving him a bad rap all across Europe. With Hyde here, the solution to this was pretty easy. The creature has to take a special serum to maintain his monstrous form, so the better strategy would have been to target and destroy his supply of the serum itself, or knock him out with a heavy amount of tranquilizer and wait for the potion to wear off, allowing him to peacefully capture the doctor in human form. Oh no! Vampires, werewolves, and ghosts? Well, two of those things you have to worry about, but when it comes to ghosts, especially cyber ghosts, you can trust them. That's right, I'm talking about our friends over at CyberGhost VPN. These guys are a top-tier service that encrypts your data, ensuring secure internet browsing. Boasting over 38 million users globally, CyberGhost VPN is a highly regarded option. Its stellar Trustpilot rating further affirms its users' high satisfaction. You see, a VPN is crucial for safeguarding your online privacy. Your ISP, public Wi-Fi, and even websites can track your online actions. CyberGhost VPN eliminates this risk by encrypting all your traffic and masking your IP address, granting you complete anonymity. Furthermore, CyberGhost VPN enables simultaneous protection for up to 7 devices, allowing you to share it with loved ones, effectively securing all of your devices. Additionally, CyberGhost VPN unlocks region-restricted content on platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime, which is super clutch for someone like me. Simply switch your virtual location in a few clicks to access the US library or other unwatchable content in your area. It really is awesome. You can choose from 100 different countries and get up to 40% more content from your streaming library. Look, if you're still hesitant, which I don't know why you are, CyberGhost provides a 45-day money-back guarantee alongside an 84% discount and 4 months free via the link below, so it's totally risk-free. This is a fantastic chance to bolster your privacy and access a world of content out there. Don't delay. Click the link in the description and begin browsing safely with CyberGhost VPN. Returning to the Vatican, the big cheese gives our boy Van Helsing here a hard time for causing so much collateral damage, but they can't argue that he gets results. After the usual slap on the wrist, it's already time for his next assignment, and this one is more dangerous than anything he's encountered before. They're sending him after Count Dracula, but killing the vampire isn't his only goal. 450 years ago, a powerful knight swore an oath that his family's souls would never rest until the Count was dead. But now there are only 2 descendants left in the bloodline, Prince Velkin and his sister Princess Anna. And if they're killed before the vampire, then they'll never fulfill their ancestors' promise. Before leaving, he's given a piece of a torn scroll that belonged to the knight, and strangely, the symbol on the paper matches the one on his ring. Going along with him is his friend and inventor Friar Carl, who knows all about the different monsters that they'll face and what they'll need to do to defeat them, including a badass automatic gas-powered crossbow and a tiny jar full of a mysterious green mixture that can create a light source as powerful as the sun. In the forest near the vampire's castle, Prince Velkin waits in the middle of a clearing with his hands tied to a post, until suddenly a massive werewolf appears from the tree line and lunges straight for him. Before the beast can connect, Velkin launches himself up and grabs onto a rope, revealing that it was actually a trap, but the plan plan doesn't go as smoothly as they had hoped. The pulley gets stuck, forcing his sister Anna to come to the rescue, and when the monster jumps down to attack her, it ends up stuck inside of a hanging metal cage. The villagers open fire with their rifles, but only Velkin's pistol has the silver bullet needed to finish the job, and in the chaos they accidentally shoot the cage's ropes, causing it to crash back down and setting the werewolf free. Anna dashes through the forest with the beast chasing after her, running for her life until they reach the edge of a cliff, but as it lunges for the kill, her brother pushes her out of the way, firing a shot into its chest as they both tumble over the edge. Okay, well, this plan wasn't just poorly executed, it was just downright stupid when you consider that they already know about Dracula's goals. Remember, Velkin and his sister Anna here are the only people with the power, resources, or motivation to actually do something about the vampires that have taken over their town. Everyone else has just accepted the nightly sacrifice as a way of life, and if these two are killed, then there will be no one left to stop Dracula and his wives from completely taking over. Now, with that being said, setting a trap to kill the werewolf first is actually a pretty good idea, but the plan that they came up with totally sucked, as we can see from how well it turned out. We know that wolves rely mostly on their sense of smell while hunting, so we should use this to our advantage. Instead of using Prince Velkin himself as bait, they should have created a convincing decoy that was covered with his scent, and then positioned themselves downwind of the target and used dirt, mud, or crushed vegetation to make their own scents blend in with the environment. When you know that silver is the only effective weapon to take him down, having only one pistol loaded with silver bullets is absolutely brain dead. Instead of a cage, I would have used a silver-coated steel net and filled the pit with silver spikes. And if the spikes didn't kill him, then the silver-coated net would render him completely unable to move or fight back. Then the hunting party can move in with as many silver weapons as bullets as they can gather, and carefully go for the kill shot while the wolf was immobilized, giving them the best chances of defeating him without any collateral damage. After a long journey, Van Helsing and his buddy Carl finally arrive at the village below Frankenstein's castle, where they're given a not-so-friendly welcome by the locals. Stepping out of the crowd, Anna tells the man to hand over their weapons, but the two of them insist that they aren't looking for any trouble. All of a sudden, Van Helsing raises his crossbow and aims it straight at Anna's head. Dracula's three vampire wives suddenly appear in the sky right behind her, and knocking him off of his feet, one of them picks up Anna and starts lifting her away, but Van Helsing grabs onto her legs and manages to pull her back down. Frustrated at this stranger for getting in their way, the brides begin attacking random people in the crowd, and no matter how many times that he hits them, his bolts don't seem to do any damage. Finally, the sun peeks out from behind the clouds, and for a moment, everything goes quiet as the vampires are forced to hide. The peace doesn't last for very long because just as the hunters realize where they're hiding, the sunlight fades, and the brides come exploding out of the wall, lifting Anna high into the air. With a well-placed shot, he manages to hit the vampire through the ankle, allowing her to crash down onto a roof, backflip to a nearby tree, and land safely back on solid ground. Two of the brides end up cornering Anna inside of a building, where the third keeps Van Helsing busy outside. But just when it looks like they're about to finish her off, that's when Carl here gives him a game-changing idea. Rushing to the church, he dunks the front of the crossbow in the holy water before firing straight into the vampire's chest, disintegrating her into a skeleton as the other two flee back to the castle in fear. Van Helsing considers this a solid win, but to his surprise, the villagers are even more pissed off than before, saying that now the vampires are going to want revenge. Only Anna here seems to appreciate his hard work, and now that she's recognized him as the notorious monster hunter, she invites him back to her place to discuss some plans. Okay, I guess the vampires weren't the only ones who bit off more than they could chew. The fight started off on a bad foot, with the vampires surprising them by attacking during the day. Now, this doesn't mean that they're immune to sunlight, but they can attack whenever there's a cloudy sky, so they can't rely on the daylight hours to keep them safe. Van Helsing also quickly learned that you can injure them using conventional weapons, like his crossbow or a knife, but to actually kill them, you have to go with one of the lore-accurate methods, like holy water, silver, sunlight, or a stake directly through the heart. The townspeople are right about one thing. The the vampires will definitely come back for revenge, but there's no reason why they can't use that knowledge to their advantage. The brides have the upper hand while out in the open thanks to their flight ability, so they need a battlefield that's more confined. And I'd say that the perfect place to stand their ground is right here at Anna's estate, where they have access to a giant armory and time to set things up before the fight. Now, before the vampires attack, they need to arm themselves with as much holy water and silver as possible. They should also use their supplies and Carl's technical abilities to create throwable holy water and silver shrapnel bombs that they can launch from a distance. And of course, more holy water coated bolts for Van Helsing's crossbow. If they set up traps ahead of time, then they can use the layout of the estate to force the brides to separate, allowing them to finish them off one at a time. I mean, it's not going to be easy, but they probably only have to kill one more before Dracula himself comes to deal with it. And then, when he shows up, they can use Carl's secret sunlight in a jar to quickly finish the job. Returning to Anna's estate, she immediately heads to the armory and starts gearing up to go hunt some more vampires. Van Helsing insists that it's way too dangerous, but when she absolutely refuses to listen, his only choice is to knock her out with some sleepy gas so that she won't end up dead. Hours later, she wakes back up in her bed and realizes that she was tricked, but when she storms into the hall to confront him, she gets a bad feeling that she's being watched. She discovers that a window in the armory is open, and there's a trail of wet paw prints leading away from it that are each the size of her head. It's another werewolf, and Anna fires a shot as the monster attacks, but when the moon disappears behind the clouds, she realizes that it's actually her brother Velkin. He tries to warn her about what Dracula is up to, but there isn't enough time before he begins to transform back, forcing him to escape through the window as Van Helsing comes to investigate the noise. With Anna too shell-shocked to react, he grabs a box of silver bullets from the friar and rushes out to slay the monster before it can escape back to the castle. Searching the town, he eventually runs into the local undertaker, when all of a sudden, the werewolf pounces on him as Van Helsing dives out of the way, knocking the man down into a freshly dug grave. The slayer takes aim, but that's when Anna pushes his arm just as he takes the shot, as the creature disappears into the night. He's furious at her for intervening, but she insists that Dracula has a cure, and feeling bad for her, he reluctantly agrees to look for a peaceful resolution first. They eventually track the werewolf back to Frankenstein's castle, where Dracula is attempting to recreate the doctor's horrific experiment. Sneaking inside, they come across a group of the vampire's minions known as the Dwergi. That's when they discover Dracula's ultimate goal, a chamber full of hundreds of hanging cocoons with electrodes attached to the outside. These are the vampire's undead offspring, and he attempts to use the doctor's machinery to bring them all to life. Okay, man, these little guys really fell in with the wrong crowd ever since the chocolate factory closed down. If there's anything worse than 4 vampires, it's 400 of their babies. But now that they know what his plans are, there's actually an easy way for them to stop this. Remember, Dracula needed Dr. Frankenstein to build these machines because he was the only person in the entire world that was smart enough to do it. So they want to make sure that these baby vampires never hatch. Then one of the simplest ways to guarantee that is to destroy the machinery itself. Dracula also isn't the only one with a mad scientist on his side, and as luck would have it, Friar Carl here just so happens to have the perfect tool for the job, a highly explosive gel that he calls Glycerin 48. Now, if they loaded this stuff into tiny vials and then placed them at strategic areas around the lab, then they could blow the whole place back to oblivion. They'll probably have to take out some of these evil minions along the way, but they're small enough that you could pick one up and use it as a meat shield if you had to. So they should be no problem for experienced fighters like Van Helsing and Anna here. But since the gel is so unstable, the most difficult part would be getting it to the lab without accidentally getting blown up first. So they might need a distraction. What they can do is have Van Helsing start some trouble on the opposite side of the castle. And then while Dracula and his minions are distracted, Anna and Carl sneak in and plant the explosives before getting the hell out of there. I mean, once it's done, Van Helsing can use his crossbow to fire one last vial of explosives into the lab from a safe distance, and then kablooey. Dracula's dreams of becoming a daddy all go up in smoke. Strapping the Wolfman into the device, they raise him up to the very top of the tower and allow lightning to jolt through his body, sending a powerful burst of electricity coursing through the entire castle. Worried, the Slayers see that the cocoons are beginning to pulse with life, until suddenly another bolt of lightning strikes the tower, and this time, the cases burst open, unleashing the hundreds of tiny hellspawn that were growing inside. Proud of their success, Dracula sends his brides out to hunt with their children, while Van Helsing emerges from cover and starts dropping them one after another with his shotgun. Furious, the vampire leaps from the balcony, transforming into his true demonic form and forcing him to take cover as the beast circles the courtyard on a pair of black wings. The Hellspawn descend upon the town and begin tearing apart any villagers who they can find, turning the place into an absolute bloodbath with no end in sight. Meanwhile, back inside the castle, Dracula is searching for Van Helsing when he briefly lets his guard down, and suddenly the hunter drops down from above and plunges a silver stake directly into his heart. But instead of bursting into flames, the vampire only stands there completely unfazed. Pulling it out himself, he mentions that it's not the first time that these two have met, seeming to remember the monster hunter from a battle over 400 years ago. As he inches closer, Van Helsing quickly pulls out a silver cross and shoves it into the vampire's face. But he grabs hold of the weapon and melts it as he howls with rage. In the village, Friar Carl saves a woman's life from one of the creatures, but just as another one is about to attack, they all suddenly stop what they're doing and begin exploding in midair like water balloons full of disgusting green ooze. Okay, these people just got lucky as hell. This entire village would have been baby bat food if Dracula's experiment had actually worked. And when you look at their response to the danger, it's easy to see why he's been able to control them for so many years. I mean, their genuine reaction to seeing a horde of tiny gargoyles flying their way was just to gather in the middle of the street and stand there like Bambi waiting to get hit by a semi-truck. Obviously, when you see these guys coming, you need to start running for the nearest shelter, pronto. Now, although they don't look as intimidating as their parents, you don't want to fight one unless you absolutely have to. I mean, they're about the size of a small dog, but they're incredibly strong for their size and tend to swarm up against a single victim, making fighting back extremely difficult. This would have been a perfect time for Carl's sunlight bomb, allowing him to possibly take out all of the babies and both of the wives in one shot. Otherwise, we know that Van Helsing was able to jib them with his shotgun, but it's possible that he was using silver bullets, which made it more effective. So, for the average person, it looks like the best way to defend yourself against them would be to find a silver weapon, use holy water, or simply use fire to hold them back. Anyone who stays outside for long will end up dead, so the best strategy is to use the crowd as one big meat shield and let the slower peasants take the hit while you make it to somewhere safe. Like, ideally, you'd want a place that makes it difficult for the little guys to get in, like a sturdy brick building or even the local church. And I mean, once inside, I'd barricade the doors and windows with heavy furniture, hoping they'd be too busy with the crowd to even notice. And if I survived long enough to see the sunrise, then I'd quickly get the hell out of Transylvania while I still had the chance. Heartbroken, the brides race back to the castle, and while Dracula is distracted, Van Helsing manages to escape up a nearby lift. Reaching Anna at the top of the tower, he fires his grappling hook far into the mountainside across the ravine, but that's when the Wolfman finally escapes, jumping onto the cable behind them and causing it to snap, with the Slayers landing safely on the other side as he plummets into the river for the second time. As they're making their way back towards the village, they take shelter in the ruins of the old windmill, but the ground suddenly drops out from underneath them, causing them to both fall into a hidden cave. Sometime the next morning, the two of them wake up at the bottom of the pit and realize that the place is full of discarded bones. Just as they're wondering whose lair that they've stumbled into, a gigantic, hulking figure in a tattered cloak appears directly behind them and effortlessly flings Van Helsing to the other side of the cave. It is Frankenstein's monster, who's been hiding beneath the windmill for the past year after the villagers assumed that he was dead. But what shocks Anna even more is that it seems like he doesn't want to fight. Drawing a blowgun, he hits the monster with a tranquilizer dart to knock him out, but as Anna raises her pistol to finish the job, Van Helsing stops her, believing that the creature deserves mercy. Before falling asleep, he warns the hunters that they can't allow Dracula to find him, or else the vampire will try to use him to complete the experiment, and he still has thousands more of Hellspawn just waiting for Daddy to come wake them up. Just then, they spot the werewolf watching them from the other side of the cave, and it escapes before they can stop it, returning to the castle to warn its master. Knowing that the vampires will come for him, they decide that their only choice is to rush Frankenstein to the Vatican, but the forces of evil won't be letting them go without a fight. Okay, this just made things a lot more complicated. Now saving Anna's bloodline is more like a side quest, because saving the entire world from Dracula's offspring just became their main objective. If the vampires get their hands on Frankenstein here, then everyone is screwed, so they need to do whatever they can to prevent that from happening. Now right now they're preparing to make the journey back by carriage, along the same route through the mountains that Van Helsing took to reach Transylvania in the first place, but there's another strategy that they might want to consider instead. According to vampire lore, one of their signature weaknesses is that they can't cross running water under their own power, so instead of traveling by land, Van Helsing and the others should think about traveling by boat. Although it might take slightly longer, they should be able to travel downriver to the Black Sea, and then sail around Greece to reach Italy. The most important thing to remember is that Dracula can't make any progress on his evil plan unless he has Frankenstein, so it really doesn't matter how long they take to reach the Vatican, as long as they make sure that the vampires can't catch him. Another benefit of being out in the open water is that it would prevent Dracula from sending his werewolf, but of course it leaves them with limited options to escape if anything goes wrong. So they'd have to carefully consider if going this route was worth the risk. Now, one thing that they haven't considered yet is how Frankenstein here might be used offensively against the vampires instead. Since Dracula needs to bring him in alive, he could be used as a Trojan horse to sneak in Carl's sunlight bomb or a bunch of glycerin, allowing him to sabotage the vampire's plans from the inside. But if all else fails, then they shouldn't rule out killing Frankenstein first like he originally suggested, because even though it's cold-hearted, it's the only way to guarantee that Dracula never gets what he wants. Returning to the village, they regroup with Friar Carl and load Frankenstein into a carriage, racing through the forest until they reach the other side of the Carpathian Mountains. They travel all day without any trouble, but as soon as twilight falls, that's when all hell breaks loose. Sensing trouble, Van Helsing draws his crossbow and whips around just as one of the vampires lifts him high into the air, but he manages to get free and falls back down, landing on one of the horses. Up ahead, he realizes that the bridge over the next gorge has been destroyed, but before he can regain control, the horses leap across the gap while still pulling the carriage behind them, sending it crashing over the side of the cliff. Thinking that Frankenstein is still inside, the bride, Verona, rushes to save him, but the carriage was only a decoy, and hitting the bottom, it sets off a huge explosion that sends silver stakes flying in every direction, piercing through her chest before the creature can get away. Meeting back with the others, he jumps onto the real carriage that's being driven by Anna, but then, an instant later, they're attacked by her werewolf brother, who takes out an oil lamp as he leaps onto the roof, causing the whole thing to go up in flames. This terrifies Frankenstein, but he's able to help the friar when he agrees to unlock his chains, saving both Van Helsing and Anna from falling to their deaths. Just when it looks like they lost him, the werewolf appears back on top of the burning carriage, forcing everyone to jump as it flips over and explodes in a ball of flames. And as Van Helsing leaps to safety, he takes out his pistols and fires 2 silver bullets directly into the monster's chest. In the aftermath, Anna finds her brother returned to his human form, just as he fully succumbs to his injuries. She's furious at Van Helsing for killing him, but right now, he's got bigger problems, because it turns out out that he was injured in the fight, meaning that it's only a matter of time before he becomes a werewolf next. Worried, Anna backs away, only to be captured and carried back to the castle by Dracula's last remaining bride. Determined to save her, they return to the city of Budapest, where they encounter the bride Alira, who offers them a deal, allowing them to trade Frankenstein for their princess. Van Helsing quickly agrees, and they decide to meet at a costume ball the following night, but Dracula isn't about to give up so easily, and neither is the hunter. Frankenstein obviously isn't a fan of this idea, but taking out his blowgun, Van Helsing hits him with another tranquilizer dart and locks him inside of a mausoleum, hoping that that should keep him safe while they face off with the vampires. Okay, Van Helsing here is in a tricky situation. The vampires have Anna, and the only way to save her is to confront them. But if they manage to capture Frankenstein, then saving one princess won't even matter, because the entire world at that point will be at risk. They need to be careful about what they do next, and that's why to me, leaving Frankenstein here knocked out, defenseless, and unguarded is a huge mistake. Although she last saw them on the mountainside, Alira was easily able to find them again in the city later that day. Because of this, they have to assume that they're always being watched, which means that the vampire's minions will already know exactly where they tried to hide Frankenstein. Even though they left him in the mausoleum with a heavy cross blocking the door, Dracula can easily send his human thralls like Igor to recover him while he is still unconscious. And then all of the cards will be in the vampire's hands. The only way to prevent this is for Frankenstein and Van Helsing to stick together at all times. That way, the hunter can at least protect him during the next battle. Of course, leaving Anna behind is always an option, but now that Van Helsing was injured by the werewolf, he won't make it long enough to reach the Vatican before he transforms. So his only choice is to confront Dracula and find the cure. This means they'll have to walk right into a trap, but like we mentioned before, the exchange also creates a perfect opportunity for them to set up an ambush. All they have to do is bring Frankenstein to the ball as planned, but then, when the vampires let their guard down, have him set off Carl's sunlight device at close range. Best case scenario, they'll take out Dracula and his wives with one attack, and even if not, the distraction could give them a chance to grab Anna and escape, allowing them to regroup and come up with a better plan. When it's time for their meeting, they show up to the ball just as the party is getting started, and there at the center of it all are Dracula and Anna, with the creature using his mind control to keep her in a pacified state. Waiting for just the right moment, he knocks out the trapeze artist and takes his place in the show, sailing over the crowd and swooping down to save the princess, just as Dracula is about to turn her into his next bride. At the same time, Carl shoves the fire breather, covering the Count in a shower of flames, while his partner grabs Anna and swings her back to safety. But the battle is just getting started. Unimpressed, Dracula reveals that his minions have captured Frankenstein, and not only that, but every single person at this ball was actually a vampire in disguise. Completely outnumbered, their only choice is to run for their lives, and they tackle Friar Carl through a giant window just as he sets off their magic sun in a bottle, flooding the entire palace with light that instantly vaporizes every vampire caught in its path. Landing safely in the river, they see Frankenstein being taken away on a boat, and although there's no way for him to stop it, he vows to save the creature before it's too late. Running back to Castle Frankenstein, they're discouraged to see that he's already packed up all of the machinery and taken it back to his own evil fortress. But nobody actually knows where the vampire's castle is hidden. They need to figure it out before the sun sets, so now it's time for Friar Carl to break down everything that he's learned so far. It turns out Anna's ancestor decided to trap the vampire inside of a hidden fortress that was sealed behind a magical wall of ice. But it wasn't long before the devil set him free once again. That's when Van Helsing gets an idea, and turning to a huge map on the wall, he realizes that the scroll he was given by the Vatican matches up with the missing pieces. Reading the inscription, they figure out the magic words to open the gate, and as he repeats them out loud, the map disappears, transforming into a giant mirror. Placing his hand against it, Van Helsing realizes that this is more than just an ordinary mirror. It's the wall of ice that hides Dracula's palace. Grabbing a torch, he bravely steps through to the other side, emerging into the snowy courtyard of Count Dracula, as his partners follow him through a moment later. They look around and realize that the place is full of thousands of hellspawn cocoons. Just then, Dracula's servant Igor notices them and runs to warn his master, but Van Helsing stops him with a spinning saw before he can get very far, and as they look through a nearby opening, they see the monster suspended in a giant block of ice dangling high above a bottomless pit. It's officially time for the experiment to start, but as he's being lifted up towards the lab, Frankenstein tells them that they can find the cure for Van Helsing somewhere else in the castle, encouraging the hunter to save himself instead. Thinking quickly, they realize that the only reason the vampire has a cure in the first place is because he knows that a werewolf is the only thing that can stop him. Interrogating Igor, he learns that the cure and the lab are each in towers on different sides of the castle. So while the others split off to retrieve it, he'll head to the lab to confront the vampire and save Frankenstein. Once his transformation begins, he'll have until the final stroke of midnight to deal the killing blow and take the cure, but if they don't make it, then he wants the others to kill him before he goes full werewolf. Grabbing Anna, the two of them share a big romantic kiss, but there's no time to waste, so after getting it out of their systems, they quickly split up to tackle their own parts of the plan. Okay. This is a major breakthrough, but Van Helsing here isn't seeing the big picture. He wants them to kill him if he transforms before they defeat Dracula, but although he'll be dangerous to everyone in his werewolf form, listening to his request would be a huge mistake. They've just learned that the one and only effective method for killing Dracula is to use werewolf venom, which means that Van Helsing here is both a potential threat and also their biggest asset. First, there might be a way to use the werewolf venom against Dracula before he even transforms. After all, the venom that they're discussing is the same substance that transforms a normal human into a werewolf after a bite, and right now it's actively spreading through Van Helsing's body even though he hasn't fully transformed yet. Using a syringe, Carl could attempt to extract some live venom from Van Helsing's recent bite wound. Then they could coat the tips of their weapons and crossbow bolts with the substance, allowing them to use it against Dracula before he's crossed over to his wolf form. And even if they aren't able to stop him from transforming, it's actually still more beneficial for them to keep him alive. If they can sedate him with tranquilizer darts, then they can safely extract some of the venom and use it against Dracula themselves, even if, by that point, Van Helsing is too far gone to actually help. Igor leads the two of them to a chamber where they find the antidote suspended in a mysterious orb of clear liquid. But as Anna steps closer to investigate, he suddenly shoves Carl down and shuts the gate, leaving them both trapped inside. Stuck, they're contemplating how to reach the antidote when a lyra descends from the ceiling and corners them in. But thinking fast, Anna shoves the case off of its pedestal and showers her with the burning liquid, stunning the vampire as they grab the syringe and use the acid to melt through the gate. It's enough to buy Carl a chance to escape, but the vampire catches Anna before she can follow, throwing her back into the chamber as she's forced to stand and fight. Outside, the friar has to make the dangerous journey across one of the exposed bridges when Igor comes chasing after him wielding an electric prod. At the same time, Van Helsing finally reaches Frankenstein at the top of the tower, quickly tearing off the restraints to set him free. But just then, the monster gets hit with a bolt of lightning, sending the first jolt of electricity through all of the cocoons. Looking up, Dracula sees Van Helsing trying to set the monster free, and knocks him back down into the lab before he can finish. Although he tries to escape, Frankenstein can't get away before a second bolt strikes the tower, and this time thousands of Dracula's little bat babies take off to swarm the skies. The shockwave launches him over the edge, but he grabs onto a cable as he's falling and ends up swinging towards the bridge, clotheslining Igor as he passes by and sending him tumbling to his death at the bottom of a ravine. Meanwhile, in the opposite tower, Anna is still facing off with Dracula's only remaining bride, but she's no match for the vampire one-on-one. Although she tries to fight back, a lyra easily overpowers her. But outside, Friar Carl knocks Frankenstein's cable free from the bridge, and just when it looks like she's done for, he comes flying in with a flying dropkick, saving her life life just in time. In the lab, Dracula confronts Van Helsing just as the clock strikes midnight, but is left completely shocked when the man transforms into a terrifying black werewolf right before his very eyes. Taking his demonic bat form, the two monsters begin absolutely throwing down, and although Dracula tries to stun him long enough to escape, Van Helsing pulls him back down into the inferno before he can fly away. Across the castle, the vampire lunges for Anna's throat, but Frankenstein catches her by the legs and chucks her into the wall, telling her to save Van Helsing while he keeps the creature at bay. Friar Carl has just been cut off by a lightning strike that took out the bridge, but she Tarzan swings down and catches the antidote as he throws it to her, only for Alira to come swooping in and knock her into the side of the castle wall. Dracula keeps trying to avoid the werewolf long enough for the curse to finally set in. Alira corners Anna on the ledge, and this time there's no one coming to save her. But at the last second, Carl throws a silver stake, and she plunges it deep into the monster's heart, causing her to explode in a shower of rotten goo. Grabbing Dracula by the neck, Van Helsing is just about to finish the job when the moon passes behind the clouds, causing him to transform back into a human at the worst possible time. Thinking that it's all over, the vampire holds back, waiting for the curse to take full effect so that he'll have Van Helsing under his control. But that's when the moon reappears in the window, and before he can react, the werewolf lunges across the room and sinks his fangs into Dracula's neck, finally ending him once and for all. All around the castle, Dracula's offspring suddenly explode now that their father is dead. With only seconds to spare, Anna raises the antidote and runs at Van Helsing, plunging the syringe into his chest, only to find that in his blind rage, he's accidentally killed her, and as he regains control, he's immediately overcome with grief at the sight of what he's done. But as they lay her body to rest, he sees a vision of Anna's spirit moving on to be with her ancestors in the afterlife, and with the forces of evil still out there, he and Friar Carl return to their adventures, saving the world one monster at a time. Van Helsing, classic joint. Got all the Universal monsters together in one movie. Hugh Jackman looking sexy as it was shot really well. It's got cool font. I like the movie, but you gotta let me know if you guys would have done anything differently down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. Don't forget to click on the description link to get the special discount CyberGhost VPN is granting to our channel users. That's right, Meat Shields. This application will protect your data while you browse and give you full access to all blocked content on the internet for $2.03 a month only. Totally risk-free, so check it out. Link is in the description. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.